Hey everyone, welcome to another Wisdom Seat podcast. This is Bill Moriarty. So, what's going to come here is a recording of a conversation that I did with Jacqui Merrell, Matt DiRodio, and Michael Carroll, who've all done a whole number of retreats, where I tried to set this up as if I was someone who'd never done a retreat, and I was trying to ask their advice on how would you choose a retreat, what is the point of even doing one, what are the different types. I tried to use sort of an interview technique at the beginning where I pretended I'd never done a retreat. It didn't work so well. So you're listening with me as I get better as an interviewer. So I hope you enjoy this and you find some value in it. All three of these people are longtime practitioners. They've done a whole number of retreats. And if you want individual advice on this, just reach out to us at info@thewisdomseat.org. All right, take care. This one's not formal. This is just conversational style. And the premise generally being, it seems like when one starts doing meditation practice, or at least the way I learned, which is from first Alex DeVaron and then Michael and then our group here, it's been like, why don't you try to get to 20 minutes a day, 5 days a week, and that's good. And that's way better than wait to the weekend and then just do an hour. It's better to do a little bit every day. I was like that for a while. And then people started throwing in retreat. You got to go, have you done a week-long retreat? Have you done a month retreat or whatever? Let's talk about someone who hasn't ever done a retreat. They've been doing their meditation practice, and why might they? And then we could talk about the different kinds of them, right?
Sure.
Right. So if someone's already built up some regular daily practice, especially if they're in a householder lineage where you have a job, family, and you're taking care of things, why would you need to go on a retreat? Or why would you even consider doing that?
Well, I personally think, you have to say, why are you meditating? It once again comes down to me, what it comes down to is a person's inquisitiveness of why they're even meditating. Are they looking for goodies? Are they looking to calm their mind? Are they looking for some kind of, psychological massage? Or is there some sense of things just, what we talked about, revulsion, right? Even that hint of there's something just not quite right, and they're on a spiritual search. They really have a genuine interest in what life's about. And I think that kind of tears off, because if one has a genuine interest in the spiritual path, then you want to know more about your mind. And all I could relate to is how a person gets to know themselves. And without the input of a lot of external stimulation, phone ringing, computer, you got the temptation of the computer, TV. Certainly now it's easier because Wi-Fi is everywhere to easily tap into a phone or a laptop. But in a primitive sense of isolation, that you're kind of minimizing the amount of external input to actually make a relationship with how that resonates with you. The fear of being alone, the fear of what this means, and also the passion to say, well, this is kind of interesting. I'm really inquisitive about my mind. I'd like to know more about it. So it has that element of, we come into this world alone and we leave alone. And like I said from the beginning of my little bit here of, are you doing this for a spiritual massage, or are you doing it for inquisitiveness?
I like that phrase, spiritual.
Well, you can use it, Michael. I'll let you.
I'm stealing it. No.
But that inquisitiveness, I think, is the thing that stems all of us. I'm certain for Jacqui and Michael and yourself to go. And so to minimize the kind of opportunities to be distracted allows that to occur.
It's interesting. So for me, retreat is, my own teacher talks about retreat a little bit differently than perhaps most people conceptualize retreat. I think when I got the questions for this podcast, I started to think about this a little bit. And we always think of retreat as sort of being this, I'm going to go lock myself in a cabin for 10 days and I'm going to, do this practice and I'm going to be very devoted. And it's sort of like it almost has like a macho sense to it a little bit. And I think the concept of retreat is something as a householder that we can think about in a way that might be a little kinder to ourselves. My teacher likes to say that the real retreat is a retreat from past and future. So this is why he runs a program where many of us have been engaged in this program for over, I think since 2010 now, where we commit to doing an in-home retreat for several hours a day for the rest of our lives. And that's another way to think about retreat, that it doesn't have to just be going to a retreat center with certain accoutrement, doing it in a particular kind of way. Retreat as a householder can be something that the boundaries are particular amounts of time that you say, I am going to be free from distraction and get acquainted with my mind. And to me, that's really what the point is that, like Matt said, most of the time we're so distracted by everything out there. And just even the act of saying, I'm curious about this, I want to get to know my mind, and I'm making the effort to do that, even if it's only a few hours a day, great, super. Even if it's 5 minutes a day for beginners, great, super. Why can't that be a retreat as well? Now, to be fair, I think what you're asking about is long retreat. And long retreat is very beneficial because it gives everything a chance to really thoroughly play out and for you to get very deeply acquainted with things. So, I don't know. I don't disagree with Matt. I think he's right.
That is super interesting. I do think what I was first thinking of is the kind you hear about where you go somewhere, a longer trip where you're at some other place and some people are taking care of, food and giving you a place to stay, this kind of thing.
I mean, you can do it, as a householder. I have done retreat too, where I just rent an Airbnb for a long weekend and lock myself in an Airbnb, and that's my retreat. And, drawing up boundaries and just giving myself that space to really work with the practice.
Yeah, I think one of your questions, Bill, if I recall, was, can one do it in your house? A lot of times my Sundays, if I don't come down for an intern, is actually I spend a good four hours in the morning. It's just I don't get engaged with a lot of things. Make my breakfast, go practice, do some reading. So mini retreats certainly is on a weekly basis. But I really think, to me, the crux of retreat, solitary retreat, is just what I was saying, the bare minimums, and getting a sense of aloneness. I mean, because we've all experienced, you can go crazy in a sense. You can see where you could easily, if you didn't have proper training, you could easily slip off and get lost in your thoughts.
When you're in retreat, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, it never happened to me.
Honestly?
And never, yeah. 10 days in, not one slip.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially
total peace.
this time of day.
Well,
That there's, the transition period. That's why you give the protector chants in our tradition is done at this time of day.
Wow. Because I have to tell you, waking up in the morning is my thing, Matt.
Go ahead, Bill. What are you going to say?
Michael, did you want to have a say on that? Like why someone would do this to begin with?
I think there's a few things. One is it also has to do with people's styles. Some people like, for myself, I love being alone, practicing by myself. I don't really like practice. I love my friends and we practice together, but it's not something I go, oh, I can't wait to do a drip chin with people. People like Matt does think this is not that much fun. Anyway, but everyone has styles, But also, I think traditionally, the tradition that we come from, many of the settings that practitioners were in afforded the ability to take time to do concentrated practice, be it monastic settings or cave dwelling settings or forest settings, and also householder situations, up until probably 150 years ago or something like that, had a rural, the line between household and rural was much easier blended. The situation we're in now with materialism at the level of sophisticated confusion, it feels as if moving from a householder daily life to a retreat is very distinctive, very like hot, cold, black, white. Whereas I think in the Buddhist, in contemplative traditions, Christian,
Christian,
Sufi, all of them, the blending between household or daily life and retreat and rural kind of energies was a much, I think, more simpler and more sort of easily embraced transition. So nowadays it feels like, what? Where are you going at the time? Where are you going to do it? Oh, that kind of thing.
But do you remember when Rakjam Rinpoche gave the talk? I forget where it was. Maybe it was with us, but he talked about that shamatha really didn't play a part so much because things were so settled and boring in Tibet that one didn't, because of the rural quality that so shamatha actually, even though you did it individually, it really wasn't to the level of what we kind of engage in. I mean, he was saying the simplicity of lifestyle, just what Michael was saying, the ruralness. I think it does create those distinctions as now because of how we live, the speed of this age.
Yeah.
So the other context that I would put in here is the context of meditation and post-meditation. That householder discipline has a lot, from a Buddhist point of view, has a lot to do with looking at the melody of circumstance that you find yourself in as a householder, whether it's raising a child or caring for an elderly parent or working or fixing a plumbing problem or whatever it is, that those circumstances kind of represent the luminous aspect of being. Just they represent it, and you can enter into the immediacy of your world and the awakened aspect of it with all of its richness, rather than I'm going to go do some very exotic practice, have a sublime sense of luminosity, all the things that we confuse ourselves with expectations. So the blending of meditation and post-meditation, I think, is a big part of the householder's vision. But the issue is if you have post-meditation, you better have meditation, And the core of it is daily practice. There's no doubt about it. Daily practice is the core. However, the ability to sort of on occasion to repair or to resign yourself into a circumstance where you can deepen your sense of passion, as Matt was saying, your devotion, and work on whatever kleshic dynamic or whatever stability of non-thought that you're working with at your own development level is part of what I would say the seasons of the meditation. There's times when, dude, you got a kid, you got dogs, your mom's sick, you got to pay the bills. I'm not on a retreat. There's no way. It's just not happening. I'm in the middle of hand-to-hand combat. But then the winter comes. You have a little time. We take 5 days off. We go and we deepen the practice. And the only thing I say is, I've been very fortunate to be able to have done many retreats. I would say the first dozen or so, they were not pleasant. I did not like them. They were unhappy moments.
Really?
And it stopped?
Yeah, now I can't wait to get the hell out of here.
Wow.
No, it's also really working with one's own deception and putting yourself into an accelerated pressure cooker, particularly if you're doing a nudra or something. That's a good thing to do, that you are actually, kind of curating, or not curating, what do you call it? Marinating. That's it. Marinating confused mind in its own juices so that it can soften, tenderize, and open as it awakens the situation. So anyway, that's all.
I mean, it really does show you, because of all the fears, that can come up, that it's all your mind's workable, that all these states are actually quite workable. And because of your sitting practice and because of your devotion and dedication to just be there, I mean, it doesn't mean that you're being a bully with yourself. I mean, if you want to take the freaking day off, you got 10 days, 20 days in a solitary retreat. There's nothing wrong. You sleep in and go, fuck it, I'm not going to pay attention to the schedule.
That's the way Matt treats.
Or, I've done retreats where I made sure I got up at 3 a.m. every day and started. When I was doing a Shungong practice, it was 4 periods a day I had a practice. And I'm doing these rituals, and I was up at 3:30 in the morning. And, so how you design it and commit to it,
Yeah. Well, let me ask about that question right there, because it's how you design it. Like, I've heard of, I haven't been to, but PTOD retreat, Profound Treasury of the Ocean of Dharma retreat, led by Judy Leaf. If I go there, am I designing what I want? Am I telling Judy Leaf what I want to do? I want my...
Let's be very clear here. Judy Leaf is the resident. She's the teacher in charge of the PTR retreat. She sets the tone with other teachers. She's not alone, but she pretty much sets the tone. How she's designed that is to try to mimic what Trungpa Rinpoche designed as the kind of container for going to seminary. It has very specific dynamics to it. It has a ground path and fruition aspect. It has a more rigorous beginning, so that when you went to seminary, the first month or so, maybe a little more, maybe a month.
Well, it was 10 days. It was in 10-day increments. Remember, we did 10 days of shamatha.
It was 10 days of pure practice,
right,
and then study,
right,
and a break. 10 days pure practice, study, and a break. But hold on. The first section was Hinayana, so the celebratory tone was not there at all.
Right.
Period. There was noble silence, lots of practice, and even the study of the Hinayana was inclining toward a very rigorous environment. So that's phase one. Same thing with Judy's. First 2 or 3 days, noble silence, practice, no classes, nothing. Then you move into the Mahayana, where you do your practice, obviously, but then it's more conversational, more discussion-oriented group discussion. The classes are a richer kind of exploration. And then when you get to the Vajrayana, you receive your pointing out, and Rinpoche gets into some very more advanced understandings of what we're studying and our discussion. And then we would have celebrations toward the end. And it got, I wouldn't say looser, that's not the right word, but it was more playful.
Well, I think the word celebratory is
celebratory, playful.
We would have,
this is not the right word, but
we would have those, what do you call it? Big meals together. Remember?
Yeah, right. Feasts. And
feasts of, people serving. And that was the other thing. People would trade off. You'd be either a server or you'd be sitting down and drinking wine and eating roast beef.
Right. So he designed that as a it was very, very specific on how he trained us. Now, prior to the 3 months, for me, I had to put almost 2 years in before I got there. I had to do my docton, I had to do my study, I had to pass certain things. And then after seminary, you had to do your nundra, which took, for me, 9 years, for God's sakes, because I was a householder. I had a little child. And I did almost all 99% of my nundro in solitary retreats, because I would just take my vacation time and go do retreats. But so seminary really wasn't just the 3 months. It was a process of training and study that took many, many, many years. And that's what Judy is using as her map there.
Okay.
But back to designing the retreats, to some degree, Matt's right. Particularly downstream, one should be a little freer with themselves. We're not here to torture ourselves in retreat. However, you should go in with a schedule and stick to it. There's I think you may recall this weekend when we were doing our teacher training, I brought up Gampopa's 5-mile mudra. And that's just a 5-step, great. I use it. This is what I use in my retreats. Not all that fancy. You start your morning off with your opening chants. You do Guru Yoga, you do your deity practice. Then you do formless meditation. And then you close with your protector chants. 5 steps. So you get to do your sadhana, but you also do some parikrama practice, the sitting, Mahamudra sitting, or ati, formless practice. And you're able to combine these into a kind of a coherent way of doing Vajrayana practice that includes both the formless as well as the deity practice. So whatever you choose to do, you want to think through how you structure it. It shouldn't be too free-flowing, so to speak.
So it sounds like people who are been practicing for a while, maybe have a teacher at that point, and they have a set of practices they do at home. They might put aside time, vacation time, or whatever it is with work, to say, I want to go retreat and do a focused on this particular kind of practice.
I mean, I think we're talking about a couple of different kinds of retreats here. We're talking about sort of group retreats as PTOD and Drukchen and those kinds of like study and practice retreats. Right. But if you're asking about individual retreats, that's how I do it. I put aside, I sort of make a commitment to myself to practice a certain number of days per year in solitary retreat. So for me, it's usually about 10 days a year that I'll do solitary retreat. What I find really helpful is I think of the retreat as more than just the time I'm in the retreat. It is also the effort put into getting there and putting my schedule together and, setting my boundaries, and all of that to me is all part of the retreat. It sort of leads up to the energy of actually getting into the retreat. And then there's the retreat itself. And then there's the coming out of the retreat. If you had said to me, I want to do an individual retreat, I would recommend, just like what Michael said, creating a schedule for yourself and sticking to it. And that in itself is a practice to figure out, because I can say from personal experience, I really messed up the first time I did an individual retreat. I thought I was going to be, some kind of like Dharma superhero. And boy, did I really overestimate my capacity. And I wrote boundaries that I couldn't possibly keep in this retreat. So even that is part of the practice. I don't remember all the details exactly, but I gave myself really hard certain end times, and I was going to practice, I think, 12 hours a day or 10 hours a day in 4 sessions. And it was nutty. Let
me ask, because it sounds like you've done solo retreats at an Airbnb that you rent, I assume by yourself. And then it also seems like you can go to a Karma Choling or a place where there's solo retreat cabins. I haven't done that. So I guess, are you renting this and paying them in there? Is anyone help? Do you see anyone the whole time? Or you go and you bring all your food and you do everything yourself the entire time? You're just using the space?
It depends on the facility and also the type of retreat that you're doing. If you're doing a strict sort of closed retreat, you might want to get in touch with a facility where someone would deliver meals to you during the day so that you wouldn't have to be concerned with that. But I've done a lot of retreat at Lotus Garden in Western Virginia. And in that case, I usually have a person there that's assigned to me to just sort of, check on me, make sure I haven't died in my room. Or, that if I need anything or there's an emergency, I have a contact. And then for that particular one, I'll bring in my own food. And as part of the boundaries I write for the retreat, I will, plan out sort of how my meals will go, how much time I'll have for like meals and practical activities and that sort of thing. And that person will be my touchstone. So she'll put me in retreat, sort of, though it's what we usually say. And she'll say, give me the lay of the land, the keys to the room, tell me where everything is, ask me if I need anything. Oftentimes people can be like a spiritual advisor too, or a mentor. I mean, again, it really depends on who you are and what kind of practice you happen to be doing. Some places will assign like a meditation instructor to you if you like that and you want that, and that's fine. Or if you're somebody that's just dropping into a particular facility and I'm going to do X, Y, and Z for the next 5 to 10 days, you'll have to send a plan. Like for Lotus Garden, I've always had to send a plan before I go and say, this is what I intend on doing. And they approve it. Khandra Rinpoche approves it and then says, yep, you can stay in the cabin. And then we work it out from there. Does that answer your question?
Mm-hmm.
When I was in the Air Force, I was actually practicing meditation when I started practicing when I was in the Air Force, and I went to a Catholic. It's a Camaldolese, and they're hermits within the context of the Benedictine order. Saint Camald was an Italian, and they have a place in. Michael laughs. He wasn't Irish, God damn it.
He was Italian. He was a saint.
But anyway, it was along the cliffs of Big Sur. Absolutely gorgeous place. But you could rent, or it was just a donation, but it was in an individual, they called them cells, but it was a nice, spacious place. And I had a little, I kind of brought my own little shrine in, but they fed you. In fact, you didn't see anybody. They'd slip it under. There was a way to open the door a slot, and they'd slip it underneath, and it was like a prison cell in a sense, But it had this big, spacious patio that overlooked the cliffs of Big Sur into the ocean. Wow. So it was really, but the Air Force paid for it. They gave me. I took retreats when I was in the Air Force.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was very cool. But it was. I'm just saying that there are places that you could be creative and not feel so restricted. Like Jacqui's suggestion of it being Airbnb, if that's good.
Well, I did my retreats all over the place.
Yeah,
one of my favorite places was an abandoned mansion outside of Philadelphia. And, John Brown lived there. It was this giant abandoned mansion. And the upper levels, it was huge.
Oh, you told me about
levels
this place.
Had holes in the roof and everything. But down below, you could still hang out down there. He had his house in there. And I would choose a room. And I did my prostrations in this one room that was a maid's quarters. So I did a lot of there. But after I got done my prostrations, this was over years, by the way, they had this really great porch with glass on it and underneath this giant tree. And in the wintertime, when it was chilly, you could get in there and there's a little heater or whatever. And I'd set up my thing. In the springtime, one time when I was sitting there, everything was generously, because it was a mansion. All the rooms were generous. And you could set up your shrine, you had your thing. And I was very happy there. And no one was there. It was just an abandoned mansion. So one time I'm sitting there in this beautiful enclosed porch, sitting there, and I see someone taking a walk. There was a house. The owners of the property had a home like maybe 600 yards up the hill. And the woman is walking down just in a nice way. She's walking, and I'm just sitting there like this. She's walking over and she stops and she looks like this. She goes up to the window and she looks in and she just sees me like this. And she goes, ah! She runs quick. I'm sure I look like a ghost to her. I'm sure, because she did not expect any being to be in this part of the house. And I didn't wave. I didn't go, don't worry. I just sat there and she just ran away screaming. Anyway, so my point of telling the story is, finding a place to do your retreat, can really vary in terms of, I'm going to be going over to a monastery. I'll report back to you if it's working. Well, I think it will be. Or someone has a nice carriage house, or you go over to my house. We have this right upstairs. Who's coming to do a retreat there is Sean. He's going to come do a 3-day retreat there. Mm-hmm. So, you can maneuver, you don't have to, anyway, you can be very flexible with yourself, so to speak.
Sure. Bill, is this discussion also including doctrine?
It could.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to make an assumption, right? If you all have maybe a newer meditation student, can I make an assumption you're not going to advise their first retreat be a solo retreat?
Most likely.
I agree totally with that. Yeah.
Okay. I can imagine the reasons, like logistical, like if you're just starting and you go a solo retreat, you don't know what to do. Maybe you don't know how to put a schedule or what you would do. So maybe it's helpful to have when I've been to programs, there's kind of like a period of sitting for some hours and some discussion, maybe a teaching in the evening from maybe just a senior meditation instructor. And there's built-in structure.
I think it depends on the person. If this is somebody who has done a lot of sitting practice and they just want the experience of tasting their mind in a deeper way, I might be okay with somebody saying, I'd like to take a long weekend and try to do a solo retreat. I mean, I would probably advise them to maybe have looser boundaries than maybe a more experienced practitioner would, like doing 2 sessions a day for a couple of hours each or something like that, just so they get the taste of it. I'm going to share that my very first retreat was stupid. I turned 30 and read a book about retreat and decided to do a 10-day solo retreat. That I do not recommend for anyone. I almost ran away about 4 days in. It was horrendous. And the reason was, it wasn't logistical. It wasn't because I didn't know how to do a retreat. It's because I wasn't prepared to do it. I had a schedule. I was sticking to it rather doggedly. There's a theme here. And I kind of exploded, and I didn't know what to do with the explosion.
Yeah, that's why it's important.
Did you have someone there? I'm sorry, Matt. Did you have someone who was protecting you or holding the space, or you just did it, maybe found your own spot?
No. So there was a woman that ran the retreat center as a bunch of little cabins. I think I've told you this story before. There were a bunch of little cabins sort of grouped together, and she would provide meals. The cabin I stayed in happened to be the cabin with the kitchen and the bathroom. And there was actually I still don't know who this person is, but there was a Tibetan practitioner next door, and I was practicing in the insight meditation tradition at the time. So it was very strict Vipassana practice, right? And I was practicing 4 sessions a day for a couple of hours each session or something like that. And there was a Tibetan practitioner next door, and we shared a kitchen and a bathroom together. And the only thing that made me stay in this retreat, because by the 4th day I was crawling out of my own skin, like I just couldn't take it, was he usually just came and got his food and left. But this particular time, he came in and decided to sit down. Now, we were in silence. It was noble silence for the entire retreat. And we ate together in total silence. And we had kind of the best time, like giggling about the food and trying to communicate about needing salt and pepper. And it really, I will remain grateful for the rest of my life for this person. I never met him. I mean, other than that, I never spoke to him or whatever. And that was the only thing that kept me going. And I think my takeaway for that, for anybody who's trying to do retreat, is know what your capacity is, have support when you do it. And, really don't try to gut it out necessarily. If you're a beginner, a couple of days.
And that was there. Did you ever find out who that person was?
Yeah.
It didn't look like Dingo Kente Rinpoche or anything, did it? I mean,
No, he was long gone.
Oh, okay.
He was long gone. This would have been 1990. This would have been 2001.
Yeah.
Just making
I
sure.
honestly think, if somebody's a beginner, and I know Trungpa Rinpoche, in reading a couple of things I've been just reading recently, somebody initially going into retreat, if it's their first time, nothing more than 7 days. It was nothing more than 7 days. But also, you have a meditation instructor check in on you. Because,
Exactly.
as the days, and you experienced, Bill, during Datun, we've all experienced what Jacqui's saying. Those first few days, especially if can be really quite rough. And so, and then you start working with that and you go, and then you wake up the next day and you go, what the fuck was that all about? Everything's okay, But, having someone, a meditation instructor checking in on you is really, I think, is important, especially a beginner. And then the transition out, I think that's an important point that Jacqui made. Things are, because you start really getting a sense of groundlessness, and things are just so shifty. And getting in a car and starting to drive, I tell you, I left a Mahamudra. It was intensive. It was like 20 days. It was at Karmacholi, and I get in the car and I almost fucking, killed myself, because space. It was, so, and I know at Datun, we always reminded people, hey, there's going to be a transition back to your everyday life.
I remember going back from Datun. I was driving in the car and this bus was driving past. And I looked at the bus and I went, oh my God. And I'm driving, just looking at the tire going, look at that thing. And I'm like, oh.
Yeah, exactly. Back to my steering.
That's right.
Yeah.
Back to conceptual world. Hello.
Yeah.
That first retreat I did, I had to drive on the Mass Turnpike, and I literally had to pull off the side of the road. I had a panic attack on the Mass Turnpike, which, okay, fair enough. Everybody has a panic attack on the Mass
Right.
Turnpike.
That has nothing to do with retreats. It's like the Mass.
Oh my God.
Like rush hour in the Schuylkill, but
Let me
Yeah.
say something here too. This I think is important because we're talking about a lot of the relative aspects to the retreat, which is important. There's no doubt. But there does come a point where the retreat bears its fruition, which is a sense of carefree openness. You can actually drop all of the conceptual kind of boundaries that we live with every day. I'm an old guy, I got a job, I got to pay the bill, but these are conceptual. They're real, they're kunzup, and they are worthy of our respect and period. But they are expressions of something that's free. And that carefreeness is the fruitional aspect of the retreat. That you are free. You are walking down the road, maybe doing your mantra, or you're sitting and you see a butterfly land and it's exactly what it is. And you're free. So this is, it's not, the retreats aren't obviously just the deconstruction of confused minds, glacial patterns, it's also the direct ease of experiencing timeless wakefulness, and becoming, kind of, I did find the page, by the way. I couldn't find it yesterday. Page 213. I was on 157. It's 213. And this what's it called? The plane flatness, was it, Matt?
I just had the book out.
Plane flatness, where you experience the awakened state not as some kind of hope or intention or wannabe, but this ordinary arrival of just being. Go ahead.
Yeah, and Michael, what you had said earlier about sort of in the old days when things were simpler, even the very structure of retreat is designed to make things simple, right? You don't have all of these distractions. And even that in and of itself has a teaching in it. Mm-hmm. You can just do what needs to be done. You get up, you do your practice, you eat your breakfast, you take a shower, you do more practice.
Go to the bathroom.
Lunch. Yeah, right. It's simple, just that's ordinary, straightforward.
That's a really good point, Jacqui, because it makes you realize how much you really don't need all the extra stuff, right? How this very simple existence, and that's where your heart resonates. How our heart just opens up, and as what Michael was saying, that fruitional aspect. I mean, where you really fall in love with Dharma and waking up and falling in love with humanity, that we all share this sanity, and that you go, oh, that's why I'm doing this. Because it's there, obviously.
Plus, really shitty stuff happens still, by the way. I haven't been on a remote retreat for a little while because
this is a podcast, Michael. So,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, watch your language.
Terrible poopy things happen as well. So the last time, I haven't been on a remote one, but one of my last ones, I don't know if it was my last one or the one before, and I probably will never do one again, but they had a little outhouse. It was a beautiful little outhouse. You'd be in this little shack and you go to the bathroom. But in the outhouse was a family of spiders. And these were not like little friendly spiders. They were the size of my hand. And they were thick. There was a mom and a dad, and there were two babies. And when you'd open up the door, Dad would be on the door. And it would be like, what the? And you'd have to get Dad, but Dad would move. Like, what? And then the little guys would go up above to hide, and Mom would be like, I'm sitting in there like, and I dreaded going to the bathroom with the family. It was so even the simplicity of it all. There's spiders.
But so how do you? But wait. So Michael, you could see spiders in your bathroom, like on an ordinary day. What, like in retreat, would you relate to those spiders in a different way, or would it just be like any other time?
They were the size of a Buick. I mean,
damn things.
If they were just little coins, but they'd be fine. And there were.
Will they carry the toilet paper?
What?
Will they carry toilet paper for you? Like, if you ran out, would they go
would go
fetch
down
it?
my back of my shirt, and who knows what they would do.
But see, right there, the stripping away of everything else made the vividness of that fear, and I think that's really actually quite key.
Yeah.
Because it really comes down to life and death. It always comes back to that. And the stripping away of lots of other, you're like, oh, I can run to the other room. Hey, you got no choice. If you gotta go, you gotta go.
It's small too. It was like small.
Right.
I couldn't go, oh, they're over there.
Yeah.
There's time.
Right,
but the reason why I bring it up is because even with the sense of joy of being free, the awakened quality of the retreat, it doesn't eliminate the reality, the rawness of life. It doesn't eliminate that. It brings it even clearer,
Right,
like if you
vivid.
hurt yourself or you cut yourself or a spider gets you or whatever.
Or
It's-
like I did, break your ankle or twist your ankle while you're on retreat and have to climb up a mountain. That's super fun.
Yeah. So anyway.
So, but your relationship to Datun,
Yeah.
I think you experienced the kind of how it peaked, plateaued, descended, and the discomfort that, from hot boredom to, I can't say what you experienced. I would imagine cool boredom was something that.
Yeah, so I got to do one Datun so far, right? So 30 days. And it was in August. And I remember at the way out the door, I saw my long johns. I'm like, whatever, I'll grab them. And then the first week we're there, it was 30 degrees and it was hailing.
August.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Acharya Ferguson was leading. He's like, welcome to the winter retreat. And there were some like poor, feel sorry for some younger kids who came with just shorts, I think, and nothing else. Yeah. But that's not the part you were asking about. But I remember we did, it was like 2 weeks, and then there was a break where they were saying some of the staff were going to go to like a bar.
Right.
And they're like, you should go. We encourage whoever wants to go, you should go.
The break.
I remember getting in the back of the car, and I'm sure they were going 25 miles an hour in this car. Like not a big deal, but you're like holding on to the side like it's the fastest thing. And then they threw on Guns N' Roses. And it came on, and I was like, this is made by crazy people. And I really love that album, but I was like, this is madness. Yeah, and then we went to the bar, which I would usually, this would be perfect. And I have like one beer, and I'm just kind of sitting in the corner, barely even like moving and drinking, just like staring at everything. Yeah, that's that. And then cool boredom to me, like the funny thing, I always like have a project, and they assign you a meditation instructor to check in with. And I remember I was like talking to him like, hey, I'm trying to get bored. I'm not bored. And then he's like, all right, tomorrow, don't do anything. And I have my notepad. I'm like, tomorrow, do nothing. He's like, don't write it down. Don't make it a to-do item. So,
that's great.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Have you ever done that?
What?
I mean, have you ever just like done a retreat where you do nothing? Like, have you ever, or just like tried to do nothing?
Oh, in my life? Oh, certainly. Yeah. At that time, at that retreat, no. Only because they were talking so much about all this kind of boredom. I'm like, I should get some of that. Sounds good. So I only experienced what I think would be cool boredom in the last week, when I finally noticed like, oh, like the tent's leaking and the picture's got like water stains on it. Like all of a sudden, nothing looked shiny anymore. Nothing looked like majestic. It looked like very plain and rain, and there was dripping, and there was like, we're just sitting here again. We're sitting here again all day, every day. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think personally, I've been quite fortunate in my life. I've done about 6 Datuns, a month-long couple of long Mahamudra intense with group, but solitary retreats, I've done a number of them. And when I was doing my prostrations, I did a month-long in February at Karma Chuling in the one of the cabins, and that was actually, I think it's, to me, practice is the best thing a human can do with their life. So I think both. Shut up, Michael. So,
I was about to say,
solo and
Michael thinks it's going to the bathroom.
I'm just such a, what do you call it, diehard. But practice is important. There's no doubt about it. No doubt. But post meditation is for householders is key. This is key. That we are the melody of our lives, the circumstances that we're in, well understood, are the awakened state, and how we engage them, how we arrange our lives, how we arrange our home, how we arrange our relationship with our child, our friends, our neighbors, This is very, very important. Tumor Rinpoche placed enormous emphasis on this, because he obviously saw what we were up against. Modern materialism. Now we got the metaverse. You don't even have to stay home. Just put some glasses on and you can go into some fake worlds, artificial world now.
Mm-hmm.
So this ability to arrange our plates properly, our underwear properly, our yard, our relationship with our neighbors, all of this is in nature, the animals in our property, so all very, very important.
Okay, I hope you found some value in that. Thanks for listening all the way through to the end. And if you'd like to talk about retreats or look for any advice, reach out to us at info@thewisdomseat.org. And Michael Carroll is going to be hosting a 2-week retreat this July 2023. So check us out at thewisdomseat.org and you'll find a link to that event.